You are listening to the Choose Your Struggle podcast, a member of the Shameless Podcast Network. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That famous quote by the extraordinary Maya Angelou is exactly why I speak. It's why I tell my story and mix education around the topics of mental health, substance misuse and recovery, and drug use and policy with motivation, inspiration, and purpose. So when you're looking for your next keynote or breakout session speaker, reach out. Find me at my website, jshifman.com, and I promise you, your employees, your group members, the students at your school, everybody will come away having learned something. And that's how we create change. Reach out today.
Spread love. Choose your struggle.
Hello and welcome to today's Monday Motivation episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. I'm recording this on a very rainy and warm July 1st, Thursday. It is my dog Nell's birthday, so happy birthday to Nell. It's her third birthday, and we're obviously just delighted to have her in our lives. She's laying here next to me, sleeping, which she does most of the day in my office, which I love. It's also the beginning of my birthday month, so shout out to everyone who has already donated to the birthday fundraiser and to everyone who is doing things to help me with that. Shout out to Spark Tabor, the Cookies for Breakfast podcast. We're going to do a special live stream on Sunday the 18th, I think it is. Is that the 19th? Something like that. Which will be the official ending of the birthday fundraiser. So hopefully we're over the goal by then and anything we make that day is bonus. If not, we're going to have a goal to hit on that day. So definitely get on that. Literally every dollar counts. I've had people donate $5. That's awesome. I really mean that. The coolest thing would be if a lot of people donate $1 or a couple dollars and we hit the goal that way. That is the true power of this, the organizing that I try to do, is to get a lot of people involved and learn about this amazing organization and the work that we are doing. Now, as the name of this episode suggests, we're talking microdosing, specifically microdosing around psilocybin. The reason I chose this is twofold. Number one, I've been struggling lately to feel creative. I think part of that is that I haven't really had a day off in a while. I work very hard at this work, and you know, this podcast and the work that I do, the live events, they're not art, right? I mean, but it is creativity, and you know, part of that, by the way, coming up on Wednesday. You're hearing this on Monday, Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern time, is the next A Day in the Life featuring me. It's just me. I am hosting. I am doing the storytelling myself, and then we'll return to regularly scheduled, you know, me interviewing other people and them telling stories after that. So check that out Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern time on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. But there is creativity that is involved, right? I mean, I as I'm talking right now, there's no script in front of me. This is just me thinking about the things that matter to me. When I interview people, I usually come in with a question or two, and honestly, we don't ever use them. Like, I used to come in with like 10 questions, and then I started bringing a couple just in case. But that's what I love about doing those interviews, is they're very conversation style. They're very much, I am present listening to these stories and what the people are talking about. And I have questions, you know. There is a lot of creativity that goes into doing this work. And I think I'm just trained. I haven't had time off in a while. I don't have any coming up. I have a day scheduled off, which is nice. But like, you know, that's okay, because this work starts and ends with me. My team is amazing. But also, you know, there is a big part of me doing this work. So I am feeling uncreative. And then I had a wonderful conversation about 2 hours before I recorded this with a young woman named Ifet Harvey of the People of Color Psychedelic Collective. They are a young nonprofit that is trying to do advocacy and education work around psychedelics, specifically providing more or trying to get more of a voice for people of color in this space. And it is a very white space. So I very much support their work. Yvette and I are going to talk about getting her on the podcast coming up. So the reason I chose this topic today is that this is something that is bringing me joy right now. And it's a topic I think that's getting a lot more attention. Psychedelics, period, definitely are. But it's also one that a lot of people don't know that much about, or if they do know something, it might be wrong. So the point of today is just very much an introduction. This will not be the be-all, end-all of talking about psychedelics on this show. Obviously, I've had people before talking about this. I will talk about this more. But for a full context here, my relationship with psychedelics goes way back. Obviously, if you've heard my story, which most of you have, you know that psychedelics were a big part of my experience. When I was struggling with addiction, psychedelics helped me leave my experiences behind and kind of get a break from my life. For me, I was never into LSD. I tried it about 5 or 6 times. I tripped maybe twice, definitely once, maybe twice. And the one that I remember was not good. The other times it did nothing for me. So LSD was not my jam. Psilocybin has always been my go-to. I did DMT a good amount, which is fine. It's just a much shorter trip and much more intense. So anyway, psilocybin. For me, I've always had a low tolerance for pretty much a lot of things. You know, I mean, y'all know I still love cannabis. When I smoke, I can't smoke a bowl. I can't. I pack my bowl of CBD and sprinkle a little bit of cannabis or high THC cannabis on top. That's how I smoke, because I can't smoke, high THC only. I will be too high. Same with drinking. I still have a good relationship with alcohol, but I can't have more than 2 glasses of whiskey. I can't have more than 3 or 4 beers because I'm not that guy. My tolerance is real low. So with psilocybin, sort of a little bit of context here. Unsafe use is considered, in terms of levels, all right? Because usually what we're talking about when we talk about unsafe use is more about the frequency, not the total amount. But there is obviously a cutoff for everything, right? I mean, you cannot overdose in psilocybin. It's not, physically, it's not possible. However, anything over a certain amount is going to be bad for everyone. It doesn't matter what your tolerance is. Typically, that amount is seen as about 6 grams, which is a good amount of shrooms. If you look at an actual mushroom, and by the way, that's, if I didn't say this earlier, psilocybin is magic mushrooms. So, these are, I'll get into this in a second, but they're literally mushrooms. Anything over 6 grams is considered just too much for anyone. Anything between 2 and 4 is a typical dose, 2 to 4 grams, for different people depending on their tolerance. You don't know your tolerance until you try. And so for me, anything over 1.5 grams is typically more than I want, higher than I want to be. At 1.5 grams, and I just tried this out the other day to see if that was still true, and it is, the initial peak is pretty high, and then I come down and I'm in a great place. Anything over that, even if I try 2 grams, which is a typical amount for some people, I will start having the hallucinogenic effects. And that's not what I want now. It was back in the day. I used to trip and really enjoy that. But now that's not what I go for. For other people, somewhere between 2 and 4 is going to be their threshold of I'm really high, but I'm not experiencing hallucinogenic effects. But for some people like myself, that is enough to kick that in. So anything below that is technically a microdose. But when someone talks about a microdose, what they're really talking about is a very, very small amount. For me and for most people, that is somewhere between 0.1 to 0.5 grams. Now, again, sort of to put that in context, 2 full grams is the typical dose for a person of psilocybin. So we're talking about a very small amount here. If you want to kind of rationalize what this looks like, A good microdose is one small mushroom, maybe a couple inches long, if that. That's a microdose. So if you're taking a microdose, the point is not to feel something. The point is not to feel high. It's more to feel. Well, it depends on the person. So before I get into that, let me talk a little bit about how I reintroduced psilocybin to my life. About 3 months ago now, right when we moved to Philadelphia, I ordered a kit. It was a grow kit for any mushroom. It's a really awesome kit, and if you're interested, reach out. By the way, I'll say this now: I am not advocating that you break the law. This is still illegal in most places. Even in the places it's not like a really serious offense, it is still illegal. It's just decriminalized. So this is something you're doing at your own risk. I'm doing this at my own risk. That being said, what we're talking about here is mushrooms, right? We're not talking. I'm not advocating that you make crack or meth. If that's what you're into, that's fine. Do your thing. That's not my cup of tea. That's not my jam. And I am not advocating that you make those. I'm not advocating that you grow shrooms. However, if you would like to do it and do it safely, let me know. So anyway, I got this kit, and the kit came with these grow mediums already created. All you have to do is add whatever you want it to grow. So if you want to grow shiitake, you can grow shiitake mushrooms in this kit. Obviously, I got it to grow psilocybin. So I reached out to a different company. These places have partnerships where they're like, if you are a researcher, wink, wink, try this place. So I reach out to them and I sign up that I am a researcher. I am a researcher. Not the type that they're probably thinking, but I am a researcher. And they send you a syringe. That's all it is. It's just a syringe. And in that syringe it's a bunch of liquid, and floating around in there is one spore. So what you're kind of doing is taking its little baby offshoots and putting them into these grow mediums, right? For the next 3 weeks or so, it just populated. And what that looked like is these grow mediums, which were mason jars full of whatever the medium that they had sent me was. They look like they're being taken over by spider webs. And they get more encompassing of this grow medium. There were 12 mason jars, of which 10 grew perfectly. 1 went bad. It turned colors, and that's a pretty good sign that it was bad. And 1, nothing happened, which is pretty good percentage. I had to use the syringe to put it in to all of these grow mediums, so it's definitely possible that I messed 2 of them up. That definitely is. That is probably what happened. So after 3 weeks, they're completely populated. You then transfer them into this sort of bigger aquarium-like setup that this company had sent me, and they grew like you wouldn't believe. I have no idea what total weight or anything like that this grew. It grew so much that I've given away over 50% of what I grew, and I still have enough to last me the rest of the year if I want to. This was nuts. The whole setup cost under $150, with shipping all of it under $150. If I was to sell this, which I'm not, by the way, I'm just not interested in doing that. I have multiple thousands of dollars worth of shrooms that this kit grew. So if you are looking to be your neighborhood dealer, I'm not recommending that. That's not at all what I'm recommending. However, it was a good money investment. So anyway, it grew all of this. And at first I was like, all right, I need to do the research. Obviously, this is super important to me that I do this right. And so I've read books, articles. I'm on my 3rd book about shrooms, about psilocybin. I'm actually reading one right now about microdosing. The person in the book is microdosing LSD. She is on my list of people that I want to get on this show. So we'll see. That would be pretty cool. But I wanted to make sure I did this right. So unfortunately, my scale, I do still have my weed scale back from 10 years ago when I used to sell. the lowest it goes to is 0.4 grams. Well, as I said before, microdosing is between 0.1 and 0.5 grams. So I wanted to start the lowest I could. So I sort of eyeballed. I got to where the scale was no longer reading and then took a little more away and was like, all right, I'm going to try this. The first time I tried, I overshot. And when I say overshot, it wasn't like, oh God, I'm tripping. Like, not even close. I took, I'm going to guess probably 0.3 grams, 0.4 grams, somewhere in there. Probably just under what the scale was registering. So, we'll say 0.3. And if it takes me 1.5 to 1.75 to trip, this is still significantly less than what it would take. Unfortunately, it was enough that I felt something. I say unfortunately because that wasn't my goal, but it was a good feeling. When it kicked in, I immediately went, okay, I overshot this a little bit. I cannot, I did it on a Saturday and I was like, if it works, maybe, I'll be creative or something like that and I'll do some work. Instead, I went for a walk and had a wonderful day. I went record shopping. I went and got some delicious food. It was wonderful. It was a really fantastic day. So second time, I did it right. I didn't feel anything. And instead, what I felt was sort of like how I've described it since as a shield, right? My wife and I, this was the third time. I think this is a better example. But my wife and I we went out for the day. We did some stuff, right? And there were things that normally would have caused annoyance, caused anxiety, caused unhappiness, and I felt none of it. I just felt good all day. I felt normal. And it wasn't the kind of thing where it was like, oh, I'm just in a good mood. Like, I was in a good mood, but this was different. This was, just yesterday, I would have been really annoyed that we waited in this 10-minute line because the venue we're going to for this thing was so disorganized, right? And instead, I just stood in line. We were walking around looking for food. It took us like 15 minutes to find a place that was open, and I wasn't annoyed about it. I just was, okay, well, we'll keep looking. These are things that normally I would have felt annoyance. I would have felt anxiety about, and I didn't. So this was really interesting to me because a lot of the research I had done was around, or a lot of the results, or what people had said the results were, was that microdosing for them was a boost in creativity. Well, as I said on the way into this episode, I haven't got that. This for me has not been creativity inducing. Now, there are aspects that have been. One of the things that psilocybin does really well for me is unlock a second level of thinking for me. So, a thought that normally would kind of just bounce through in my head, I'll seize on and go, oh, that's a great idea. Let me store that away for later, right? But the idea that I'm going to take some psilocybin and think of the next big plan for my business, that's not really how it's been working for me. It's more just extra levels of thinking that allow me to consider things deeper or from other angles. That's a good way to put it. But for the most part, the majority of it for me has been this shield. So last week, we had a visitor in town, and she was interested in taking some psilocybin and going to a museum. So I gave her what she wanted. She took over 2 grams, which for her was not enough to trip, but this was her normal level of, I'm going to be really high for a while and then be a really beautiful level of high for the rest of the afternoon. So I was like, all right, I cannot take that level. I know myself well enough. That's going to be a bad afternoon for me. I'm not interested in doing that. So I took 1.35 or 1.4 grams. I don't remember the exact amount. And it was higher than I wanted to go. It was a really good learning experience. I was never so high that like I was in danger. Obviously, that's not what this was. It was just more of, okay, my peak is very high right now. And then 30 minutes later, I was perfectly fine where I wanted to be. So these are good learning experiences. Obviously, that was not a microdose. That was 10 times the microdose level. And it was a good learning experience because for me, it was a safe environment. I was in a museum, and I know that that's not what I'm interested in doing going forward. It was a mindful use of shrooms, which is something that I strongly advocate, and I think that is really important no matter what you're doing. Obviously, that you do it with a mindful or in a mindful way, and that's the good and the bad, right? That's the okay. The results from this I'm getting are good. And it's also, oh, wow, okay, that wasn't what I wanted. Obviously, part of that mindful use was making sure that I wasn't, I'm going to take 3 grams and see what happens. Hell no, that's not mindful. But afterwards, being like, okay, I can safely say I went higher than I would like to go in the future, not anywhere close to what would be unsafe, but also more than what I'm enjoying, right? I mean, that's the mindful piece at play there. So I think for a lot of you listening, you may have no concept of what I'm talking about, right? You may have gotten high. You may smoke some weed. Obviously, you've probably been drunk in your life. That's much more common. So what does shrooms literally do to you? Well, the downside, the negative of shrooms is you are effectively giving yourself food poisoning. I mean, it's like that is literally what is happening. It is not uncommon in the half an hour to, let's say, hour after you take shrooms to very much be in a position where you need to go to the bathroom. You do not feel good. It's not comfortable when you first take it and your body is like, what the fuck are you doing to me? Your stomach does not feel good. But if you go to the bathroom or if it's not high enough that needs to be the case, it'll pass and you feel okay. It goes away pretty quickly. The shroom high is very different than weed high. You smoke weed, you kind of blast to a certain level immediately, and then you slowly come down from there. The shroom high is different in that it comes in waves. The first wave you feel, if you microdose, obviously, you won't feel any of this. You may feel the ultimate peak, like, oh, I just felt a little bit of something, whatever that is for you. Some people, it might just be you're hyper aware for a second. You're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling that. For others, you may get the equivalent of, let's say, a buzz, depending on what you take and what your tolerance is. But the shroom high comes, it builds, you hit your high, and then you start coming down. And depending on how much you've taken or what your tolerance is, that can be, let's say with a microdose, you're only feeling the highest thing. So that feeling will last a couple minutes. For taking an actual dose of shrooms, you're going to feel it for probably between 4 and 6 hours. Sometimes as high as 8, depending on how much you took, what your setting is. By the way, that's if you haven't heard that expression before of set and setting, it talks about what it applies to is that when it comes to psychedelics, the two most important things in how you respond to the drugs are your mindset, your set, and the setting that you're in. So, literally with mindset, are you in a positive mood? Are you in a negative mood? Are there negative influences that, that's where a bad trip comes from? Are there things that are going to influence you, whether internally or externally? For setting, it's, are you in a place where you feel safe? Are you in a place where you have stimulation that's positive and not negative? Bad trips do happen. They are not random. We've been kind of led to believe by movies that, oh no, this is going bad on me. Well, it's not the drug. The drug doesn't have the capability of being good or bad. The negative or the positive is completely controlled by those two influences, whether it's internal, external, mindset, or your setting. So that has a lot to do with it. And you do have to be a bit in control. So a perfect example, that first time when I took the probably about 0.3 grams, there was something immediately that happened right after I took it that was like, wasn't a negative. It was more annoying than anything else, right? But very quickly, not long after that, my mind started spinning about it and going, okay, I need to focus on this. I had to stop in and say, nope, you cannot. Number one, there's something I could do about this situation. Again, it was nothing. It was just an annoying situation. I cannot be of any help. And also, if I focus on this, I am going to be annoyed. I'm going to have a negative interaction with these shrooms. So I had to instead put on some good music, set myself in a positive direction, and then I had a wonderful day. So you do have to have a little bit of control in that sense. You also, of course, do not want to be in a situation where you could be influenced by a negative external event. So one time I was on shrooms. This was, over a decade ago. We were sitting at my friend's house and a car accident happened outside. It was one of those freak events. Obviously, you can't plan for that. That obviously took a negative turn. Now, it wasn't like a bad trip, but it was like, I still remember this, obviously, 10 years or more than 10 years now, 12, 13 years. That kind of thing implants on you because you're like, wow, like this is a very heavy situation. So that is where your intentions really matter. And for me, I am sure with practice, as a lot of people have successfully done, I could use microdosing to the direction that I was mentioning earlier about creativity, and I could train myself to, as I said before, once I have those positive thoughts, those interesting ideas, keep going down that rabbit hole to the point where beautiful things come from it. I'm not there yet. And I'm also not doing this that often. I've had these shrooms now for 3 weeks, and I've done it, or more than that, almost a month. And I've done it 5 times, 6 times. One of the books I'm reading, I've read, said that a good microdosing experience should be once every 3 days. I obviously have not followed that regimen because I've done it once every 5 or 6 days. So that is a really interesting idea to me. I don't know that I'd want to do it once every 3 days because a part of microdosing, a part of any extreme experience, a part of any psychedelic experience is the come down. And this is something I'm working with my team on of sort of figuring out, is this something that I could, sort of present on at conferences. And this is an idea that is very, I think, interesting to me and interesting to a lot of people in this sphere is the come down aspect of this event, because when you take a lot, the come down is a very real thing. It's heavy, but even when you microdose, you feel the absence. You may not feel the impact because it's such a small change in the way that you're feeling that it's almost imperceptible, but you do feel the lack of it. You do feel when it leaves. And if you don't take care of your mental health, if you don't do some of the mindfulness exercises that I've talked about endlessly on this show, that come down can be super heavy, and it can send your mood cratering. And even if you do some of these, I have noticed that the next day my mood rating tends to be one rung lower because it is emotionally tiring at times to feel that come down. So that is something that we're exploring because I think it's a really important topic. And it's something that a lot of people have a misconception about, going back to this idea that the drugs cause that. No, it's more about you. It's more about the person. It's more about your control over your mindset. So, really, I think fascinating. I hope this has been enjoyable to you, a good introduction. As I said, I could talk about this for a lot longer. I think it's a very important topic because we're seeing now therapy being built around higher dosage of psilocybin specifically that are really changing people's lives and really helping people Obviously, that is a very different use of this. It's a very structured use of psilocybin, one that I am so interested in trying. And I've spent a lot of time researching and reading about, because I just find it fascinating, and would love to try it myself. So that is the thing that I have on the back burner. I've been exploring, trying to find people that I could try that with, and if I find someone, I'll definitely let you all know. But as always with Monday episodes, let me know what you think. The first person to reach out gets a magnet. The second, third, for whatever, gets stickers. And so please reach out. I would love to hear from you. If you've tried psilocybin, if you've tried microdosing, let's compare notes. If you're like, how dare you talk about this? I think that's overblown, but still would love to hear from you. So, have a great week. Please check out the birthday fundraiser. My birthday is this week. So, do a birthday, a nice birthday thing for me. I would definitely appreciate it. All right. Choose your struggle.